What's up, guys? Master T Killer here, and I'm kind of upset. I'm a little late on this, but last week Steve Meade did his Ant Test Tuesday, and for those of you who don't know, Steve Meade. Wait, this is a video about car audio, and you don't know who Steve Meade is? Really? I'm lost, because apparently you're lost. Anyways, Steve Meade, YouTube channel, Meade916. He's the guy who worked with Ascended Audio to make the SMD subwoofers, the 18s that push out, what is it, 2500 watt RMS. Anyways, as most of you know, for a while I was running a Crunch 1500 watt amp, the monoblock. Now I had got this Crunch amp before they came out with the V-Drive series, and every Tuesday Steve Meade films a video of himself putting amplifiers on what's called an amp dyno, and basically, you know, he can see what these amps are capable of pushing out, at how many ohms, and you know, with how many volts going to them. So he had the V-Drive. It was it's the V-Drive. I think it's the 1100.2 or something like that. I'm not sure, but basically on the front of the box, it reads 1100 watts max with 2 X's, and that's 1100 watts maximum, which means that if an amp is tested at 14 volts, because that's typically what your car is gonna see when it's running. You know, some cars see, you know, a little bit lower, 13.9, 13.8. I know for a fact that my car sits at 13.8 when it's running. But at 14 volts, this thing should be able to push out 1100 watts maximum. And of course, if you cut that, if you make that 2 ohms, it should at the very least cut it in half, maybe even bring it, you know, somewhere around there. So you would expect that at 2 ohms, this thing should be running 500 watts. I believe he said that's what it said inside the booklet. It said it was 500 watts max at 2 ohms. The issue with this was when he looked through the owner's manual, all it had was max for 1 ohm, 2 ohm, and you know, and 4 ohm, you know, 1 channel, 2 channel, all that. Everything was at max. It showed no RMS, just all max power. So he put it on his dyno, running at 14.4 volts. Okay, so if this thing is rated at 1100 watts maximum for 1 channel at 1 ohm, 2 channels, because he had it at 4-channel bridge, which is 2 channels. Anybody who knows anything about an amplifier, when you bridge it, it cuts the impedance in half. So it's running at 2 ohms. It should at the very least be able to push 500. Hell, at the very least, it should be able to push 400. If it can do 1100 watts maximum at 1 ohm, why can't it do 400 at 2? To say it jumps from, okay, let's say it did do 400 at 2 ohms. When you drop it down to 1 ohm, and it doubled that, because that's how Ohm's law works when it comes to audio and stuff like this, you know, in electricity. When you take 400 watts at 2 ohms and you cut the ohms down to 1, your wattage should, the wattage that it puts out should double to 800. Let me give you these numbers, okay? First of all, it's got 2 35 amp fuses. So if you take 2 35 amp fuses Add those together, that's 70 amps is what that amplifier can pull maximum on its best day. Okay, so let's say 14 volts. That thing should be able to push out 980 watts. Still shy of what it said, but let's see if you were to push 16 volts to it. Oh, okay. 1,120. So you got to push 16 volts to this thing just for it to begin to even want to touch what it's advertised as. Who's really running 16 volt setups? And if you're running a 16 volt setup, I can guarantee you that anybody out here with a 16 volt setup in their car has something a whole hell of a lot better than a Maxxonics Crunch amp. So when he ran the test at 14.4 volts, he brought it up to 1% distortion. And at 2 ohms, it only pushed out 253 watts. That's it. 253. And this was like $110, $120 amplifier. Like, he filmed himself going into the store and buying it. It was like $110, $120. Now, he turned it up to clipping. So basically, when he has it up to distortion, if any of you ever listened to music on Windows Media Player, and you set it so that it shows the little wave length thing that kind of curves its way around with the music, you notice as like the beat hits, the waves go up and down, up and down, up and down. This here coincides with how your speakers do, or in this case, your subwoofers. It's like a negative positive thing, how your subwoofer goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It will flow along with that wave. Now, if you go onto the equalizer settings on Windows Media Player and you turn everything up, as the beat goes, you notice instead of it being a smooth curve, it becomes squares that are cut off at the top and bottom. That's clipping. What happens when your speakers are fed this clipping, that means that they're being pushed further up than they should go, and they're slamming into the bottom. Typically, if there's enough power going to them, they're slamming into the bottom. Even if there's not enough power to slam your speakers into the magnet at the bottom of them, clipping will still destroy your speakers. So he turned it up to the point where the amplifier was clipping. Mind you, they're not connected to any speakers, they're connected to the dyno. It pushed out 272 watts while clipping. What this means is when this thing should be pushing out 400 watts, it's only pushing out less than 3. Okay? And let's say you did have this running and you knew, okay, yeah, this here is not, this amp can't push 400 watts at 2 ohms. Fine. I wanted to push 275. You can't get 275. And if you wanted to do 272, you're going to blow your subwoofers. It doesn't matter how good or how awesome your subwoofers are. If you set it to clipping so that this amp is actually pushing 272 to them, you're going to blow them because distortion kills speakers. And it's ridiculous because I know my Crunch amp, I know it wasn't exactly pushing out 1,500 watts. I know this. I know this for a fact. It was not pushing out 1,500 watts. But I know it wasn't that far underrated. Not like this 1,100 watt V drive. Nowhere near underrated like that. So the fact that this thing is so underrated is ridiculous. And I have to agree with him. He said, you know, if they put 250 watts on the box, this is a 250 watt 2-channel amp. Cool, fine, you know. He's like, yeah, you know, that's a pretty good deal for 120 bucks. If you go to a big box store, 120 bucks for a 250 watt amp, yeah, that actually is kind of good. I mean, I get mine for cheaper. Well, now I get mine for cheaper. But that's ridiculous. Come on, Maxxonics. All these videos I put on the internet showcasing you guys as Crunch amp, and this is how you do us? I'm disappointed, man. I'm out, dude.